All right, so now that you got all your installs ready to go, I want to show you a little bit of the command line, and we'll play around with a couple of things here and then grab a couple of our favorite VS Code extensions. I have quite a few more than maybe what we recommend, but play around with them, have fun with them, and go from there. So first off, so I do have my command prompt open again, and I'm starting here at users mark O. Now, if you miss the Linux commands, or excuse me, the Unix commands on your Windows computer, and you type ls, you might get a message like, hey, that's not a recognized command. That's your first indicator here to say maybe you had a hiccup there with your Git installation. You may want to do it again. Beyond that, I can type clear, and it'll kind of blow away that data. So let's talk about some of those commands here. So first off, I'm actually going to start with one that you're going to want to do probably from this point within your computer, inside of your users folder, inside of whatever your user profile is. So for me, that's users mark O, and I'm going to say mkdir. This is short for make directory. It tells through our command line to go ahead and create a folder. Now, I will say, can you do all this through the GUI interface or the graphic interface where you kind of open Windows Explorer, you right click, create new folder? Yes, absolutely. But we want you to be comfortable with navigating around here in the command line, so that's why we're showing you this. So make directory creates a new folder for us, and we're gonna go ahead and call it source. Now, as you see here, I already have a source. I've done this step before, so I'm gonna go ahead and dive into that. So I'm gonna cd into source. All right. Great. CD is change directory. It allows us to provide a file path to navigate to. So CD source moves me into the source, and you see that gets added to my URL here, or my my file path. So that said, from source, I actually want to create another folder, mkdir codeworks. And this is where I'm going to basically be keeping all the projects that I build throughout the cohort. So when I hit enter, once again, I'm going to run into this issue that I already have a codeworks folder. So I'm going to cd into it. If you are doing this yourself, you'll find that ultimately it just drops into the next line. It probably doesn't give you any kind of prompt at all about success. It just says it's there. You can always check to see what's in that folder if you type ls. So here we have my codeworks folder. It's empty. So if I wanted to remove that folder, say I made a mistake or a typo or something, I can use cd ... to move up a directory. And then I can say rm-rf codeworks. This command says remove recursively force, meaning I want you to remove this folder and all its contents. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. And now if I type ls here on source, codeworks is gone. And of course I can make directory again. Awesome. So now that we have that, I'm just going to go ahead and open up VS Code right here, just with my codeworks folder. It doesn't truthfully matter where you open this, but for right now at least. But I'm going to jump into my preferences, so I just need an instance of VS Code open. If you type the command code space dot, it says, hey, I want to open VS Code at, and the dot is the current working directory. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and we'll get VS Code to open. Cool. Now, the first time you're spinning this up, you might get something like this. Do you trust the authors of files in this folder? This basically says, hey, I'm opening code from users mark O source. Do you trust the things in this folder? Well, everything you put in here is code that you have written. So yes, we want to go ahead and say, trust the authors and all files and part of Marco. So I can say, hey, everything in this folder, I trust. That'll only usually come up the first time unless you hit like trust for now or something like that, in which case, of course, you'll have to do that every time. All right, so let's grab some VS Code extensions. On the left-hand side, we have a couple things here on VS Code. We, of course, have our File Explorer. Here we have our codeworks folder. There's nothing else in there right now. I have my source control Git. I'm not doing anything with this right yet, but we'll talk about this in a later video and pushing to GitHub. Here we have debug and run. This allows me to run servers from inside of VS Code, something we probably won't be working in for quite some time. Next up, we have extensions. These are all the different extensions that we have installed to help us in our journey as we're building out code within VS Code. The rest of these, search allows me to search all the things in this project, and these other three are actually extensions that I have installed. So if I come back here to the little blocks and extensions, and again, if VS Code changes its icons, of course, this may not have those little blocks. Hopefully they'd keep it at least something a little bit similar. So I'm going to do a couple of things. The first one I actually install is auto rename tag. Now, you may want to see these and you might pause the video and go to these installations yourself. So feel free to pause at any point as I'm going through this. So auto rename tag, this is kind of nice. You can see in the little window, what it does for us is essentially every time I create an opening tag, it'll automatically edit the closing tag. So that's pretty cool. Bootstrap 5 quick snippets. We're actually going to use Bootstrap 5 on week 1, so ultimately you may not need this throughout your pre-course work, but we might have it eventually have installed in class. Bracket pair colorizer. This one's pretty nice. As you can see, it says, hey, the opening curly brace is purple, the closed curly brace is purple. Here's an opening blue, closing blue. So another one, it kind of color coordinates the brackets as you have them in your code. C# you won't really need in your pre-course work, and you won't need till the end of the current course, so I'd probably skip over that. Same with C# extensions. This is one I just kind of like because I'm not real great at spelling. So if you're like me and you constantly have typos or things like that, you might want to check that out. It can kind of help a little bit with that kind of stuff. CodeSnap is another one that I use more as an instructor. It allows me to take pictures of my code and share them out. Not something you'll probably need. One we absolutely definitely recommend installing here, comment anchors. This allows us to put notes within our code, such as anchor, to do, fix me stub, note, review section, and navigate to them easily later. They get the nice color combination and allows us to kind of find stuff within our code, make notes, write little tabs for ourselves to say, hey, I need to review this. Maybe I'm struggling on this concept or things like that. Error lens is just a slight improved version of error handling. You probably don't need to worry about that too much. ES6 string syntax, HTML. This one's kind of nice because if you're ever having to write HTML within a string in your code, it doesn't exactly highlight it too well. So this kind of helps with that. Not necessarily a needed, but maybe a recommended. And then the rest of these we'll actually get to later in the cohort. The other thing you can kind of find here in your extensions, some things that people like to install are different color themes. So you can search like color theme, and you'll find a bunch of different ones that you can kind of find that, like, hey, maybe you like the GitHub theme, and it shows different color and syntax highlighting for that kind of theme. So feel free to play around with some of the other ones. Try not to go too crazy, as a lot of extensions can kind of slow you down a little bit and just kind of get a little overwhelming. But the main ones I'd focus on are the kind of those initial ones we talked about. Let me clear this out here. Auto rename tag, bracket pair colorizer, comment anchors are definitely the ones I would make sure you have at the start of the cohort. All right, in our next videos, we'll be diving into some code and starting to learn a little bit about HTML. But until then, good luck.